Keys to the Kingdom by Jerry D. Young. Prologue. Kevin Crain was tired. He'd lived a long, healthy, productive life. Part of Tom Brokaw's greatest generation, he'd done his part in World War II and then again in Korea. He matured during the Cold War. He'd seen a couple of the atomic bomb tests firsthand and knew the destruction that would come with all-out war. By the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis, he was a dedicated survivalist before the term became known, well before it became a dirty word. Too old for Viet Nam, Kevin used the power of his vote to make changes he thought needed for the U.S. to continue as the leader of the free world, and kept an eye on the changing world situation. Several times he went on personal alert, ready to take his family into the extensive blast and fallout shelter in the backyard, just as he had when Kennedy backed Khrushchev down. The Cold War seemed to have ended without a nuclear exchange, but Kevin knew his history, and his motto was, "It's a matter of when, not if," when it came to being prepared. As his children grew up, the small town where he'd lived since his birth did, too. It became part of a metropolis, with all the negative aspects that went with it, at least during the late 70s. Survivalism was becoming widespread and taking on the dirty definition of a militant, pro-religion, cultist, anti-government force to be shunned and destroyed in any way possible. Never one to speak of his extensive plans that predated the Cuban Missile Crisis, Kevin made his move to the Missouri Ozarks as a simple retirement move, so he could do a little hunting, boating, fish the local lakes and rivers, and do a little talking on the ham bands during his declining years. He considered himself lucky when it came to his financial security, but he'd been just as observant in the late 40s and early 50s as he was now. He got on 4 bandwagons in a big way. They more than made up for his poorer decisions made during the same time period. IBM, GM, and AT&T stocks early on, not to buy and sell, to buy and hold, for years. The dividend income was enough to take him from helping his father in his plumbing business to the presidency of his own company, a plastics manufacturing company, in on the ground floor. He held on to it and ran it until he could no longer stand the obscene offers he was getting for the company. He sold it in the 70s and got into the rapidly rising business of computers. A longtime amateur radio operator, Kevin had spent many an hour in hobbyist electronics stores and bought a Radio Shack dealership specifically to sell the new home computers. But one to spread the risk, and despite an overwhelming fondness of Radio Shack and then Tandy proprietary computers, Kevin invested in Intel and Microsoft, simply to hedge his bets. It paid off big time. But there were new dangers in the world, even after the dissolution of the Soviet Empire. Besides, Kevin didn't trust the Russians even after the breakup. He didn't even trust the Germans or Japanese or Chinese, having fought all of them in his 2 hitches in the service. And the stock market was growing faster than some people could count their money. He looked at his family fondly one Christmas at the Ozark homestead. All 3 of his children had done well for themselves under his tutelage. His 7 grandkids had grown up the same way. They were book smart, but they were also savvy, with a lot of good common horse sense. Kevin decided that he would give his great-grandkids the best gift he could before his death. He decided to become a farmer/rancher, one of what would be termed green several years later. Farmers that gave back to the land as much as they took from it and provided the best food at the best prices possible in the modern world of the fast-approaching new millennium. At least he was a farmer and rancher in name. The actuality of it was he had hired experienced people in traditional farming and some youngsters just out of college that had all the new green techniques down pat. Between them, Kevin would have the operation he wanted. That first year of getting things set up was a bit of a trial, but Kevin was pleased at the end of it. Christmas was about as storybook as one could ask for. But then January came, and with it came personal disaster upon personal disaster. You have been listening to an audiobook excerpt from Keys to the Kingdom by Jerry D. Young, published by Creative Texts Publishers, LLC, all rights reserved. Visit our Creative Texts website at www.creativetexts.com to check out all of the other great authors and titles available from the Creative Texts catalog.